This video is brought to you by
Haukland, photographer's clothing.
In this lesson I talk about shutter speed. And shutter speed is very important for a lot of things in photography. It is always connected to movement. The movement of your hands when you're photographing, the shaking you can say, and the movement of what you photograph. For example, waves, like we have here at the ocean. For example, a person that you might photograph, an animal you might photograph, or whatever has movement with it. Also clouds, water, like waterfalls, creeks, and so on. A lot of times, for example in landscape photography, use a longer shutter speed to make certain movements in an image visible or more arty, you can say, more interesting to watch. But for example in sport photography, you want an action to be frozen, like a water drop in a fountain falling down. You want the water drop to be super sharp, super crisp. What we will do here at the ocean is try to capture different shutter speeds with the waves, and then see later in the images how the waves change with the different shutter speeds. Shutter speed, of course, has also something to do with brightness. So the faster the shutter is, the darker the image is, and the longer the shutter is, the longer the shutter is open, the more light gets onto the sensor. I already talked about that in the lesson how a camera actually works. As a quick recap, the shutter is in front of your sensor and it dictates the sensor how long the light goes onto it. For example, we have like a door that opens and closes, and when you have 1 second of shutter speed, it means the shutter, the door, is for 1 second open. And everything that is moving in that 1 second will be blurry, because the shutter, the door, is that long open. But when you have a very fast shutter, like let's say 1/500th of a second, so the door is only open for 1/500th of a second, a very fast, very short amount of time, then the action is only visible for the sensor for that small amount of time. And that's why the image is frozen on the sensor and the action is frozen on the sensor. And we will see that now with the waves, and I will also show you some examples of a creek, because with water flowing down a creek or a waterfall, it's exactly the same. So you can try now at home to go into manual mode with your camera and then close your aperture all the way to the end. A very tiny aperture. That means not much light gets now onto the sensor. ISO is on 100, so also the lowest ISO number. And now you try to play the zero game and adjust the shutter speed that you get a properly exposed image, or maybe overexpose even a little bit to +1 to give a little bit more light onto the sensor. And what happens now? You have a longer shutter speed. Congratulations! Depending of course of the light situation, it would be best to go in a shadow area, maybe a forest or something, when you have a small creek to try it out, or when you are at the ocean, try to do it in the morning or in the evening, not at pure daylight, then it's not that beautiful. Okay, so you have a longer shutter speed now, maybe half a second, maybe even longer, because your aperture is closed a lot, you blocked a lot of light, and you need to compensate that with a longer shutter speed.
You want to take photos in pouring rain or bitter cold? Easy for me, because of the best jacket system for outdoor photographers. My name is Jaworskyj, professional photographer for over 12 years. And this is my signature edition of the Haukland 7-in-1 Parker Pro jacket set for photographers. When I'm outdoors, I want to focus on what's truly important. I want to feel comfortable, warm, dry, and always be ready to take the photo I have in mind, no matter how bad the weather. One set, 3 jacket layers you can wear in 7 ways, made for professional use. Check it out for your adventures. Maybe you also like the photography backpack, winter gloves or classic jacket system. at www.haukland.us.
Haukland. Photographer's clothing.
So when you block one thing, let's say with the aperture, not much light gets into it, then you need to compensate to bring the light back on to play the zero game. You have to expose a longer shutter speed, long amount of time, a lot of light for a long amount of time because that hole is so tiny. Okay, now you adjust the shutter speed, you make it a little bit faster, maybe 1/8 of a second, 1/10 of a second, something like this. And you can see now if you have to adjust as well the aperture, because it's always connected to each other. When you make the shutter a little faster, you have to bring more light with then the aperture on the sensor. Okay, now we take a third image and make it a little bit faster. Maybe 1/30th of a second, 1/50th of a second, something like this. And see now, the image will be darker, so you have to compensate again and open the aperture a little bit. And that is actually the whole game about manual exposure. You always have to bring everything in relation, everything is connected with each other. Okay, now you make another image, maybe with 1/100th of a second of shutter speed, and you have to open again the aperture to make the exposure even and to play the zero game. And you now will already see a huge difference between the first image and the last image. They can look almost similar in exposure because you exposured everything around zero. Maybe the first image was a little bit brighter, but then the second should be at least at zero. And from brightness, the image looks pretty much the same. But what is different now is the movement. In one image, the action is blurred and it looks shaked maybe, like you have shaken your camera while photographing. And in the other image, it will be sharper. All right, now let's continue this game. Make another shutter speed, double it maybe, 1/200th of a second. You have to adjust then the aperture, open it again. Now a 640th of a second, 1,000th of a second, and so on and so on. Go all the way until you reach the end of your shutter speed. With my camera, it's 1/4000th. And with your camera, maybe it's even 1/8000th or something. And then you will recognize something, depending on what lens you are using. You will recognize that you have to increase the ISO, because otherwise your image will be too dark. And this is the whole game about photography. You now learned already about ISO, because with the ISO you now compensate that fast shutter speed and you compensate that lack of light. Because the shutter is so fast now, 1/4000th of a second, it's so fast, you have to bring the ISO up. Don't be afraid of the ISO, there's a whole lesson about ISO and you now learn already why you need it. When you want the fast shutter, you need the higher ISO. That's it. You want to freeze the action, you need the higher ISO and you need to open the aperture. My exercise for you today is to try out that exact scenario. You can use a tripod for that, it's much easier because then you avoid hand shaking, because this is also something that can make your image blurry. And you can also take the same shot over and over again and then see the differences in the image. The best it works with a creek or waterfall, maybe a fountain, or maybe waves when you have an ocean around or something. Then you can try to capture a constant movement of water, maybe also of something else that is fast moving, and then try to capture all the different shutter speeds that I just told you. Start with the slowest shutter speed available and then go up to the highest shutter speed available with the light situation you have. It's much easier in the shadow or in the morning and evening when the sun is not there or very low than at pure daylight, because at pure daylight you cannot expose that long. But of course it's much easier to have a fast shutter speed at pure daylight. So everything comes with a catch. All right, a lot of fun, and see you in the next lesson. This video from my beginner's course Simply Learn Photography from 2023 is part of my photography legacy. Over a period of 5 years, I will publish my courses from learnfromben.com for free and with ads here on YouTube. So everyone can benefit from my knowledge regardless of budget. So subscribe now to the channel and spread the word.
And do you want all 9 courses from the last 10 years immediately bundled together and without advertisement at a super affordable price? Then go now to learnfromben.com and get the XXL Bundle as an instant download or stream via the website at www.learnfromben.com. More than 22 hours of the finest learning content on photography, filming and image editing in all levels of skill. Link is in the description and in the comments below. And also check out the sales section with my signature tripods and D-filters and books. Everything is on sale up to 60% off, as long as stocks last. Thank you for your support. Videos from the courses are published every Friday at 5:30 p.m. German time. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj and I wish you all some really good photos.